Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Caitlin Milligan, and I'm the Supervisor of Programs for the Grand Prairie Public Library System. Tonight is our fourth and final program in our American Experiences series, where we invite a panel of guests representing different marginalized communities to share about their lives and experiences in this country. It's our hope that by listening to and learning about their perspectives and the challenges they face, we can grow and become a more open and supportive community. Tonight, we will be focusing on the Muslim experience with another wonderful panel of speakers who I will introduce now. So our first guest is Farah Ajami. Farah, you can wave. And Farah was born in Bombay, India, and immigrated to the US at the age of 11. She graduated with a BSN from UT Arlington in 2009 and started working at Parkland, first as a student nurse, and then she was hired on as a registered nurse upon graduation. Currently, Farah works as a trauma nurse clinician in the trauma department at Parkland Hospital. She's also faculty at Texas Women's University, and some awards she's won are DFW Hospital Council Employee of the Year, DFW Great 100 Nurses, and D Magazine ICU Nurse. All very impressive. Okay, next we have Badis Nuiwat. Badis, you can wait. Badis is currently a marketing student in his final year at the University of Texas at Dallas. He runs a local news media company called the Irving Muslim and also has a weekly newsletter that keeps his readers up to date on what's going on in the Muslim community. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Jyoti Ahmed. So Jyoti had to move quite a bit as a kid, from her parents to her grandma to her aunts to her uncle, from one city to another in Bangladesh. And then finally, 15 years ago, at the age of 17, Jyoti landed in California. Through all of the moves and changes, one thing kept her inner self stable, being able to draw and paint anything her heart desired. Art is Jyoti's preferred language, so she pursued a BFA in painting, and she hopes one day to get her master's in art therapy so she can work with teens and adults to help them overcome their mental health challenges. Jyoti works here at the Grand Prairie Public Library, where she is the library outreach coordinator and runs an art club. Jyoti was born into a Muslim family, and her first language is Bangla, the language from Bangladesh. She considers herself to be a universal citizen. She loves to cook and learn about people's culture, recipe, and all things food related. Jyoti is married and a proud mother of two beautiful dogs, Lola and Zach. And finally, Imam Saeed Parcel. Imam Saeed is an Islamic counselor, educator, and public speaker with nearly 3 decades of experience. He specializes in convert issues with additional focus on mental and spiritual health and couples counseling. Okay, so throughout this program, I will be asking our speakers questions that I have prepared, but our audience is also allowed to submit questions in writing. My colleague Isela will review those and can pass them on to me. And for our speakers, I ask that if I mispronounce anything or ask any questions that are misinformed, please correct me. I know that I have plenty to learn on this subject as well. So let's get started. Okay, so to get started, I'll just ask for the whole group and I'll call on y'all individually. Please share one thing that you really love about the Muslim faith or belonging to the Muslim community. So let's start with Badis.
Okay, sure, yeah. So, growing up, I was born here in Irving, Texas. I grew up in the Muslim community. As a young boy, I would go with my father to the masjid, to the mosque. And the thing that I really feel is special about the Muslim community is that it really feels like a community. Like, everyone is so connected with each other. We're taught to say, to tell greetings to each other. And even if you don't know who it is, you still extend the greeting to them. And new people are always brought into the community and everyone tries to welcome them. And so, and even within the young people, there are youth groups that are very, very active with weekly meetings, and we have events and we invite youth from all over the Metroplex to join us. So it's really a meeting place for the whole community to come together to help each other with anything that's going on in our lives, to just build bonds with each other.
Awesome. Let's do Farah.
I actually concur. Like, it is a great big community. It doesn't matter kind of where you go in the world. You're always a part of something. And no matter, even if you're of a different sect of the religion, you always have something, in common that kind of, binds you together. And like, just like you said, salam, the greeting, it doesn't matter. It's one of those where you kind of see each other, you make that eye contact and you just kind of know, and you say salam to each other. and it kind of, you know, binds you together. That sense of community, I would have to say, definitely is definitely one of, I guess, the best parts.
Great. Imam Saeed.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to really extend my appreciation to you for having this forum. This is fantastic. For myself, I'm a convert. That may not have been apparent in my profile or anything else. So I was born into a Christian family and grew up until my 23rd year in the United Methodist Church. But I've obviously converted and have now spent almost 28 years as a Muslim. And so for me, the thing that I probably find, and to echo some of what Badis and Farah have already said, the sense of community is very strong. And it was something that I was fortunate enough to experience very early on. But the thing that I've noticed about that sense of community, and the thing that's really amazing to me, is the thing that binds us together is a set of common values. So the circle of friends that I have literally span the globe. And if you were to look at us, you would think, what on earth binds these people together? Because there's no immediately obvious common denominator. But the common denominator is that set of values that we share that binds us together. It's that shared conviction that is what unites the hearts, and not just in the community here or in the other communities in which I've served, but literally around the world. You can travel and you can be from another part of the world, not even speak the local language, but that shared faith will afford you a welcome and an ability to experience the society in a way that a normal outsider wouldn't get. And it's truly amazing. And it is that power of that shared conviction to create that sense of community amongst even seeming strangers in very short order. There was many times in my past when I would meet people, and some of them, because of the way we would interact, and I had just enough Arabic to get by, they would think they knew me for years, and we literally had met that moment. But because of the way we interacted, the impression they got was that somehow I was this person they had met before and they had just forgotten my name or something like that, etc. But it was that powerful bond that I've been fortunate enough to experience and continue to experience, being pulled into leadership roles within communities across the U.S.
Awesome. Wow. Jyoti.
Thank you, Caitlin, for the question. I actually have a very same answer. The community sense. I was thinking about the 5 pillars of what Muslim religion is about, and I was thinking about the last one, and all of them is very much about community, but I was thinking about the last one, and the last one is the Hajj pilgrimage. And about 1.5 billion people yearly goes to do Hajj by ants, and everybody all went. And the clothing that they wear is a basic white clothing. So I was thinking that doesn't matter like how rich you are, how poor you are, black, white, brown, like men, women, doesn't matter whatever background you have. When you go over there and you pray and you perform the Hajj, everybody wears same clothes. You leave behind everything, and you have that one identity, and everybody wears the same thing. And this is encouraged in many different areas in this religion. And that's the sense of community and being, I guess, very humble. That's what I really like about this, my community.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so Imam Saeed, this is probably a really big question, but as much as to get us started, could you tell us about the 5 pillars of Islam and why they're important? kind of the condensed version.
Oh, you're a brave soul to ask an imam to speak about religious topics and say, keep it to 5 minutes. So yeah, the 5 pillars. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm gonna tweak the question or the answer a little bit. There's 2 components that are very significant when you talk about. There's the 5 pillars, which are maybe more commonly known. There's also another group of 6 pillars, 2 different categories. So the 5 pillars, which is what Judy had just referred to, are the outward manifestations of the practice of the Muslim faith. The first one being the declaration of faith, which is a statement that I bear witness that nothing deserves to be worshipped except for Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, or the messenger of God. That's the first one. The second one is salah, or prayer. And so and the difference here is that in the Muslim understanding, there's basically 2 types of prayer. There's a formal prayer, which is these 5 daily prayers that you hear talked about. That has a specific form, a specific structure, specific words, and timing. That's a formal prayer that has, is ritualistic, if you will, in its design. But there's an informal prayer, which is more akin to what most other faiths are accustomed to, where it's more of a turning of the heart towards the divine and speaking from your heart, or just out of your emotion to the divine, asking what you need, or pouring out your heart, etc. So there's 2 different things. But this second pillar is the 5 daily prayers, which is a formal prayer. The next is what's referred to in Arabic as zakah, which is the easiest way to translate it is a poor due. Essentially, it's similar to tithing in the Christian religion, but the rules are slightly different. Whereas the tithing, the way I understand it, is 10% of your wealth, period, generally. Whereas zakat, or this poor due, is 2.5% of your wealth, but it's 2.5% of your wealth only when it exceeds a certain amount. The idea being is that, for argument's sake, I don't know what the number is exactly right now. It's $1,000, we'll say. So what that means is that you have to have in your possession for the entire year at least $1,000. If at any point in time your wealth decreases below that amount, you then are no longer considered required to pay it, because now you are technically deserving to receive it rather than to pay it out. And so you remain above a certain amount of wealth, which is in Arabic, they call it the nisab. It's the cutoff point, if you will. Above that amount, you then pay that 2.5% on whatever wealth you've accumulated, however large it gets. So it starts there and it goes up, and it's 2.5% of that once a year is the way that it's done. So that, and then the fasting, which is generally well known, which is fasting in the month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. And because it's a lunar calendar, the date moves approximately 11 days back in reference to the Western calendar. So this coming year, if I remember correctly, it's going to be approximately like the 13th of April. If I remember correctly, is when it will start. And then it will go for 29 to 30 days of fasting. So no food or drink from dawn. So not sunrise, which is what a lot of people think initially, but no, it's dawn. So when the light first starts to come into the sky until sunset, which varies in different parts of the world. So in different parts of the world, it'll be longer or shorter. I think that's going to break down to about 10 to 11 hours, if I'm not mistaken, this coming spring. But so it'll be no food or drink for those 29 or 30 days. And then that's done as a commandment from God. And then the first of the 2 big celebrations, big holidays, comes at the conclusion of the fast, which in Arabic is referred to as the Eid, or essentially Eid is like a returning joy or returning happiness. In this case, it's Eid al-Fitr, which is the Eid of Fitr, meaning Fitr is breaking of the fast. When you say that you're having Fitra, you're breaking your fast. So it's the returning joy of the final breaking of the fast. And then the last one was the one that Judy just alluded to, which was the Hajj, or the pilgrimage, which is something that is done by every able-bodied Muslim once in their lifetime. But part of the requirement is that you have the means. In other words, not just the financial means, because it's not a cheap trip, as you can imagine. You're leaving, you're going overseas, in some cases around halfway around the world, and then you're going to be there for at least a week. Sometimes people stay much longer to take advantage of being in the Holy Lands as long as they can. Not the same Holy Lands that people might think of when they hear that term. But that is something that, again, is required once in a lifetime if you have the means. If you never are financially solvent enough to make that trip, you're not required, and you're not sinful for not having done it. But just having the money may not be enough. You also need to have the health. You need to be able to have enough money to care for your family while you're gone. If they don't come with you, then you need to leave enough behind so that they are taken care of while you're on your journey. So there's a host of requirements that you have to meet. So it is required, but it's a conditional requirement. So those are the exterior ones. There's some interior ones. I won't spend as much time on those because those can take up a lot of time. But there's another set of pillars which are referred to as the pillars of faith. So now the pillars of Islam are the outward manifestations of the practice of Islam. The pillars of faith are the inward convictions that drive that practice. So the first one, the most important one, is belief in Allah, or belief in God. And I won't go into exposition on these because it'll just get way too long. The second one is belief in his angels. The next one is belief in his books. The revelations is what it's referring to when you say books. Revelations are books. The fourth one is belief in the messengers. So this would be the prophets and messengers that were sent. And then you have belief in the last day, or the day of judgment, and everything that's associated with that. And then finally, belief in what's most easily translated as predestination. The idea that God knows what is going to happen, and he has full control over the outcome of everything in existence. At the end of the day, the results of everything are in the hands of God, and we are just, experiencing them as they unfold.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Farah, could you talk to me about the meaning of the hijab and why you wear it? Also, any kinds of discrimination you may have faced because you wear it?
Well, the main purpose behind, wearing a hijab is just because God asks you to. It's kind of the command of God, of Allah. And you do that because that's what, he asks of you. But there's, different meaning behind it. It is more of modesty and kind of that's the worldly view of it. It's more about respect for your body, modesty, and basically, in a way, for me personally, it's kind of been more about don't look at my outward appearance, basically. And it kind of it almost, in a sense, takes away from the outward appearance so that people aren't focused on that. It's more of take me for me as I am, not the physical me, which is kind of what Islam teaches you anyways. It's that it is not about the outward vessel, it is about the soul. And in a way, women kind of get to carry that with them. And so you want, it's, I guess you can say, the right kind of attention. You want attention for your mind, your intellect, your heart, your soul kind of thing, not for the way you look. And I think that's kind of that's kind of the core of it. But I mean, what it boils down to is you do it because God asks you to do it. And it pleases him. So you do that because of that. But again, like I said, it's many different things that kind of come along with it. To me, I have never necessarily been a shy person. I've always been talkative and all of that. So that's never been an issue. But and it wasn't until I started wearing a hijab that I kind of came out of my shell, where I was, I more openly expressed myself. I not necessarily became more opinionated, but I was more okay with kind of offering it or asked. I wasn't just kind of trying to, kind of blend with the crowd, and all of that. It was, I mean, I was already out there. I was already, someone people, I was already the odd man out. So might as well, take advantage of that, speak my mind, and, kind of use it to my advantage in a sense. But I kind of, most girls kind of start, wearing a hijab kind of when it says, when you say kind of the coming of age, that's kind of what it's, but I was late in the sense. I wore I started wearing a hijab. I think I was a junior in high school, um, which I was like 15 years old. And for, most girls, it's supposed to be like 9, 10 years old. So I was a couple of years late on that. And it just kind of happened that was the year after September 11th. I started wearing a hijab. I believe it was 2002, because that September 11th was my sophomore year in high school. But early on, I actually did not face that much discrimination. My sister kind of went through that a little bit because she was a little younger. Kids kind of didn't understand. Whereas for me, I received a lot of support, because I was in high school. I started wearing hijab in the middle of high school. I had gone 2 years, I'd made these friends and all of that. And now all of a sudden, after this huge, incident happened in the country that's shaken us, the next year I'm wearing a hijab, kind of showing my religion out. So kind of everyone rallied around me. I was one of, I think I was one of 2 hijabis at the school at the time. So I remember kind of, the football team kind of rallying around me, and they were like, if you need anything, you let us know. I had, friends walk me to class, just in case, and all of that. And so that new experience, it kind of helped me, okay, I can do this, but as the years gone on, of course I have, faced discrimination and, those, the side eyes and, the snarky comments. I've gotten a lot of free yourself, you're a free woman, you're in America, you don't have to do this anymore. I've also gotten quite a bit of go back to where you came from, which, at times it kind of takes you aback, but, sometimes you have the right words. And, I was at the grocery store and somebody kind of once said, hey, go back to where you came from. And I was like, down the street, that's kind of where I am from. But it doesn't, always kind of work that way. But I feel like it's also, I guess in a way, because you're just kind of flaunting your religion out there, it's a great kind of speaking topic. And I always kind of say, ask me anything you want. I would rather you ask me than assume something. No question is kind of, off limits, nothing, I won't take offense to anything. I would rather you just ask me. And I kind of open that, door for people. And it's like, hey, did your dad force you to wear it? Does your family make you do it? Do you take it off after you're married? There've just been a slew of questions that I've gotten, about it. But I think it's more curiosity just because people aren't used to it. But as time has gone on, there are more and more of us kind of out there. And there's more and more hijabis that even I notice. Like say at work, I was the very first hijabi that ever worked at Parkland. And they'd never had one of those. They had to rewrite like the dress code policy because of that. And now you see them everywhere kind of thing. There's doctors, pharmacists, techs, students, everyone. But I'm not the odd one out anymore. But, as we're diversifying and everything, and I feel like people are more open to kind of, wearing a hijab and all that, just because, I guess there's just enough of us out there, I feel like. But yeah, as times are changing, people are just getting more used to it.
That's great.
if I could real quick make just two quick comments about that, because one of the things she was saying triggered something for me, and then another point I wanted to just quickly bring out. So she mentioned it, and it's interesting as I listened to her story, it actually bore this out. One of the verses that talks about the hijab or the covering mentions in there the reason or the intent behind it, and the way it's worded is what means that in order that they are known and not harmed. And so as I first thought of it, she hadn't gotten to the stories about her experience, but as she shared her stories, I'm listening to them thinking to myself, see, that's an example of exactly what we're talking about. She became a known entity, a known quantity, and she actually was protected in ways that a lot of people wouldn't even have expected. You talked about the football team being basically her hired bodyguards. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. The other thing that I want to point out real quick, and this is something that whenever I point this out, people suddenly go like, because here it is. I'm 51. And I'm sure some of the people that are tuning in are around the same age. Some may be older, some may be younger. But in my lifetime, I remember when my grandmother, for instance, would rarely, if ever, walk outside without putting a scarf over her head. Now, as I'd alluded to, I'm a convert. So my grandmother was not Muslim, did not come from Muslim lands. But this was a habit that she was very accustomed with. And if you look backwards a little further, it was very common for women to have scarves over their head or to even be dressed very similar to the way a Muslim woman dresses now, with a very modest and very, very enveloped style of dress. Even if you think about it, even to this day, nuns dress very similarly to the way Muslim women dress, but the attention that they get is different. The dress is practically identical, but the attention they get is different. Why is that? It's not the dress then. There's assumptions and there's biases that are influencing that. It's not purely the dress, because if that was true, nuns would get the same interest.
Thank you. Jyoti, let's talk about, so you choose not to wear a hijab, though you still identify as Muslim. Could you talk about the ways your faith influences your life, even when you don't follow it the same way as others?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. There isn't really one answer to my question. There is several different parts to it. I'm a Muslim from Bangladesh. Most people in Bangladesh, we don't really wear hijab. I think maybe because once upon a time, Bangladesh is very close to India, and once upon a time, everybody used to be Hindu in one part, most of the people, and they became Muslim, and eventually Bangladesh was separated. But I think it's more cultural than religious, that we don't really wear hijab as a country, even though it's 96% of the people are Muslim. So that's probably one thing that culturally that we picked up. I picked up from family, people, neighbors, everybody near me. One more thing, I guess, my both grandma, my aunts, my mom, everybody, they're very pious people. They pray, they read, they're very kind people. They do, they follow the religion very well. But I have never seen them wearing hijab. They always cover their head with the part of sari that most Bangladeshi people wear. But I have never seen them wearing hijab, and they dressed up very modest. Also, I'm not the best person about verse or anything, but I'll say that probably my understanding is in the 6,000 plus verse that we have, there were probably 3 verse that talks about hijab, how to dress as a woman. My understanding is hijab is not mentioned in those 3 verse that it had to be hijab, but it talked mostly about being modest, dress up modestly, and also dress up according to the needs and where the situation demands and where we are about those things. So I personally feel dress up fairly modesty, because it's kind of like the Constitution argument, because you could stretch it and there is many different interpretation of the constitution. Like some people say, well, this is right. Some people say that's not right. So modesty has a different scale, and people lands in different scale. And I feel like my religion doesn't have to be like, I mean, I don't have to, as long as I feel I'm very modest, I dress appropriately, and whenever the situation demands, that's what I follow. I feel very good about it. And I have also been judged on the other side as well, that I'm glad that you are normal, you don't wear hijab. And that's not at all what I feel. I feel like people who wears hijab, and they look beautiful, and I have so much respect for them. It's so much hot and cold and so many different weathers and things, and they still wear their hijab. They're very that's what they're passionate about. They believe in it, and they should go for it. I have also been judged on the other spectrum, where they have told me that how come I don't wear hijab. It's my belief and what I do internally. My exterior, like, that doesn't really like determined, that's not determined by other people. I get to choose that. So for me, that's modesty has different skill, and this is where I fall into. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Let's go to Badiz. So the expressions Allahu Akbar, Inshallah, As-salam are common expressions that I think people outside of Islam have heard. Could you explain what the meaning of those expressions are and their significance? Oh, we've got you muted.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. People were, excited when they heard Joe Biden said "Inshallah" on the in a, I think it was a press conference or something, or the debate maybe.
This is the first day.
Oh yeah. So he said "Inshallah," and or the right way to say it, I guess, is "Inshallah," and it means if God wills. And so normally we say it when we want to do something. We qualify it with "if God wills," meaning that we don't know what's going to happen exactly in the future, but we hope that this is going to happen. So it's kind of a lot of times I find myself writing it in emails to my professor or something, like, and then I say, why am I saying "Inshallah" to my professor? It's like, it's just a habit, but I think it's a good habit because it tells you that you don't have control over everything, and you make plans, but you are satisfied with the result of things. Another word that is very popular, Allahu Akbar, kind of been taken over by people trying to make the religion look bad, but it's a very powerful phrase that we mention several times per day while we pray, and it means that God is the greatest. So when we say it during prayer, we say, God is the greatest when we start our prayer, and throughout the prayer we're repeating that. And like, let's say something big happens, something shocking happens, sometimes you think to yourself, Allahu Akbar, like Allah is the greatest. So there's many applications of the phrase, but it's just something that we say to remind ourselves that no matter what happens, Allah is the greatest, and He is the most important thing in our lives. So it's unfortunate that people take some like special phrases to us and to our religion and try to make it look bad, and then people like to say that as mockingly to make fun of Muslims and things like that. Like growing up, going to school, people would say that phrase just to like make a joke or something. So I think it's better to educate people about what it actually means, so then people don't think of it as it's tied to people that do terrible things, but they just think of it as, wow, what a beautiful phrase, and now I know what it means. I don't have to attach a stigma to it. And people like Christian Arabs also say Allah to say God, because it means God. So when people don't really realize that Christians have these phrases in their language too, from Arab countries, Arabic speaking countries. So it doesn't make sense to attach it to something wrong, because it's really just an important phrase for religious people everywhere.
Thank you. Eid, could you tell us about the true meaning of the word jihad and how it applies to Muslim practice?
Okay, you broke up there. I'm assuming that was to me just now.
Yes, that was for you.
Okay,
Did you hear the
okay.
question?
Jihad, explaining jihad. So the
Mm,
term, and I actually want to start off by hearkening back to what Badis had just said. Arab Christians, obviously, by definition of the phrase, they speak Arabic. So you will find in an Arabic Bible the word jihad and other forms of the word in Arabic that are composed of the same letters, which mean they carry the same root meanings. The root meaning of the term jihad comes from its linguistic root, which is jahada, which is to struggle. And so any form of struggle in Arabic is referred to as a jihad. And so in the Bible, you will find passages that refer to jihad in one way or another, in the same way that you'll find them in the Quran and in the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So jihad at its essence is struggle. Now, when you talk about how was that, what does that translate into? Obviously, what people are familiar with when they hear jihad is they think of armed conflict and things like that, etc. And to be fair, that is one of the meanings that you will find it applied to, because it is a struggle again. But this in this case, it's a physical struggle to, if it's being done according to the religious precepts, to make the word of God supreme or uppermost. That is the goal of jihad in the proper religious context. It is not for partisanship. It is not for politics. It is not for personal gain. It is not to demonstrate your courage or your ferocity. It is solely for the purpose of making the word of God the uppermost in all the lands. And that is important to understand. But the context you find the term used in the most is in the sense of a personal struggle or a spiritual struggle. And the talk of one of the concepts, and this is something I talk about frequently, is the idea of what's referred to as mujahada and nafs. When you say mujahada and nafs, it's the personal struggle, or the struggle with the self or the soul. This is part of the spiritual perfection, the practice of spiritual perfection that you enter into. And this is also referred to in the same form of jihad, but it's a different sense of it. It's struggling with your inner demons, if you will, and identifying them, rooting them out, trying to correct them and change them, and rise to higher and higher levels in terms of your conduct, in terms of the ethics and the morals that drive your conduct and your behavior, not just externally, but even more so the internal realities of your life. And this is, if you will, a jihad, but this is a completely different sense of the idea of jihad. Jihad is any sort of struggle, and the one that is most talked about is that personal struggle, that inner struggle, because that is the battlefield. Because, and just I'll end with this. One of the principles that you'll find some people talk about is the idea that you shouldn't engage in the physical struggle, the physical jihad, if you haven't already fought the inner jihad. Because if you have bad character or bad motivations and bad nature, and you go into the field of the physical jihad, then you will not behave according to the standard that you're expected to keep in the midst of doing that. You won't be doing it for the right reason. You won't be doing it to raise the word of God supreme. You'll be doing it for selfish reasons. You'll be doing it for worldly reasons or something like that, etc. And so the inner jihad, the personal battle with your inner demons, is ideally should precede any thought of being engaged in a physical jihad, the armed conflict, if you will, because if we're weak individually, then we're going to fail in the larger battle in the physical realm.
Thank you. Jyoti, could you talk to us about your experience living as an immigrant in this country, someone with an accent, with brown skin, and identifying as Muslim? What kinds of challenges have you faced because of your identity?
Yes. those are few very pronounced things in everyday life. My brownness, my immigrant self, and me being from I'm Muslim. So there are some sweet things. There are some negative things that I would say. Some good things is like, I can make friends very easily. Being immigrant in America, a lot of people are immigrants over here. So it's like that's instant connection with like immigrant families. Doesn't matter if they're from Nigeria or like wherever they're from, like we have an instant connection right away. So I love that. I'm a painter, I'm an artist. I love my accent a little bit. Actually, I think it adds a little charm to my life. I like to think I'm the Muslim Frida. Some negative things. Mostly things have been, for me, as like Farah said, that she's been very talkative. For me, I've been fairly talkative, and I'm a very talkative person in general. So things have been much easier for me than like my parents and other people whose brownness is very brown and whose Muslimness is also very Muslim and apparent. So I would say that some of the struggles that I have faced is I have to work much harder to prove myself a lot of times because of my accent. I feel like a lot of people think that English is a measurement of intelligence, which is not. My language is not the measurement of my capabilities. One more thing I have noticed, that people like assumes things a lot when you are immigrant and brown. But because of my last name, people always assume that I'm from Middle East. Because of my color, people always calls me Indian. And even after like 1,000 times I corrected, they still say like, it's the same thing, isn't it? No, it's not the same thing. It's different. Also, like very few things that but they surely has left some marks. It was 2005 and I was working in Baskin Robbins. I just came to America and was working in Baskin Robbins, and this guy asked me where I'm from, what my religion was, and then he told me that he doesn't want to take his order from me. He doesn't want to get the ice cream from me. And his reason was because I'm Muslim, and isn't it Muslim people are supposed to hate Americans and kill them? And I was like, this is crazy. But obviously I knew better. My coworker, she helped him and we just didn't get into any arguments. But obviously these are some of the things. That's not the only time. I mean, a lot of times I go to restaurants and I probably don't get the same kind of urgency of customer service like some other person will get. Those are some brown things that I face every day. Or like my parents, it was 2018, they went to mosque and it was a Eid day and they were coming back home, and somebody broke their car window, and she was wearing a hijab that day. And I mean, that happened. I mean, so those are some of the things that I feel like that happens because of brownness and the immigrant self and me being Muslim. So most people are very, very generous and kind in every part of the world. I think there is a small part, it's always crazy like that in America or Bangladesh or wherever. I've been very fortunate not to feel that so much, but definitely I know that I'm different. There was a time that I always thought, oh, like, no, I have so many friends from all these different kinds of places. And, when I hang out with them, I think like, oh, I'm one of them. But then actually I found out later that no, they don't always see me that I'm one of them. I am different. And now that I'm in my 30s, I see it all the time that it's very pronounced that they see me very different. But there is some good side, there is some bad side, but I'm very, very glad that I'm an immigrant and I'm brown and I'm Muslim as well, because my job, what I do, outreach, and what I want to do, art therapy, I think it makes me want to be humble. It makes me relate to people, and it makes me want to share my experience and and welcome people. And I guess like I'm very thankful for having this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Badis, so you are still young, you're in college now. When you meet new people, how do your peers tend to react when they learn that you're a Muslim? Do you find that your generation is more open and accepting of people of all backgrounds, or do you think there's still a lot of room for growth? Do you have any experiences of discrimination? I'm gonna need you to unmute real fast.
Yeah, with discrimination is something that I think a lot of people face. If it's not open discrimination, I think it's more of either you don't notice it, or you just feel like kind of a reluctance to really portray yourself and portray your religion because you're afraid of how people are going to react to it. One situation where I did feel like I was facing discrimination openly was in high school. Me and my friend, we started a Muslim student association. And so we would organize a weekly prayer, because on Fridays, Muslims have a communal prayer called the Jummah, where we come together and there's a short lecture and then we pray together. So because we were in school, we tried to plan this at school because we couldn't leave to the mosque. So we started having Jummah prayers at our high school. For several months, we were going strong every Friday. We would ask our teachers, we would have a note, can we leave for 5 to 10 minutes at this time? And we'd all meet at the library, and then either me or my friend would prepare a short lecture and we'd give it, and then we'd pray together. And then one day our principal saw us coming out of the library in a group after we had just finished prayer. And then he said, "What were you guys doing?" And then we said, "Oh, we were just praying. We always do this every Friday." And then he was like, "We can't allow this." And then he said, "You guys can't do this anymore." And then we tried to ask why, and then he kind of just tried to get us to go back to class and never told us why. So we never really found out what the problem with that was. I don't think we really pursued it, really. We just thought that, we can't do this, and we tried to find another solution. So that was one situation where I felt like, normally as a Muslim man, I believe we don't face as much discrimination as a Muslim woman does, because Muslim women are more openly portraying their faith with the hijab. So but the thing is, it still happens, especially if you have a beard, or if you have a Muslim name. When people hear your name, sometimes they react in a certain way. Me personally, my name is not very Islamic. It's more of a North African Berber name. But I've seen it happen with my friends, and I just think discrimination is something that most people face, whether openly or not open. Well, what else were you asking the question? Sorry, I forgot.
Honestly, that pretty much covers it. My only other thought is, like, do you think your generation has become more open to Muslim people than past generations?
Yeah, I think the first step is to just know more about each other. In my middle school, I remember there was a lot of Muslims at my middle school, relatively, and so a lot of the students knew more about the Muslim faith, and so they were less discriminatory because they just knew more about us and they knew us as friends. And I think with the new generations, there's a lot more of understanding of different cultures, different faiths, a lot more mixing of cultures. Maybe in past generations it was more homogenous, but with so many immigrants in this country now, and so many people coming from different places and so much to learn about each other, it really reduces the stigma. I think the biggest thing is just knowing a Muslim. Like, when some of my friends, just by knowing me, they were less had less bad ideas about Islam as a faith. So I do think that the new generations have a better chance at reducing the discrimination or just bad opinions of Islam.
Great, thank you.
I will add something.
Yeah.
The Muslim thing, it's not, it's kind of hard and annoying when you have to catch a flight and you are at the airport. That's where it's very, very difficult to be Muslim. My name is Ahmed. I know many people has named Muhammad. It's very difficult. We get stopped all the time for extra checkup. It's not fun at all. So that's where being Muslim sucks, especially in LAX.
Okay, next question is for Farah. So do you ever feel scared to be a Muslim in America? If so, could you tell us about any specific instances that have been frightening for you?
I'd like to say no. I think the only time where I was, I guess, fearful, I feel like when September 11th happened, I was just kind of too young. I was, 13, 14 years old. I understood the gravity kind of it. But it was just, I was a child at that time. But I've never actually been scared. Granted, I've, had, slurs thrown at me and, quote unquote threatened, but never actual threats until recently. I felt fearful going to work. I actually worked the day after the 2016 election. So that was just because kind of the rhetoric that, the election was won and everything, it was suddenly okay. It made me realize, I guess, that the country kind of agreed with that, that they were okay with that. Whatever the reason was, whether it was, foreign policy, whether it was economics, whatever, but that kind of showed me that it was okay to have that mindset, the leader of your country to have that kind of mindset and still be the leader. The people are okay with it. So that was kind of, a reckoning that, I was like, maybe, what about people actually do feel this way? So that to me was very kind of tough. It was a tough pill to swallow because, you don't expect people. You expect people to be, your neighbor. You expect them to be the one, bring you cookies and you bring them cookies and, that kind of, everyone's happy. But it was kind of, I don't know, it felt like people were kind of hiding their true feelings and then they got them out when it came to the election. So the day after was one of the hardest days I've kind of had. Just recently, I want to say it was actually this past July, I was again driving to work and I had a car kind of follow me all the way, basically 2 miles from my house, all the way till work almost. And they had, a big Confederate flag flying in the back. And they followed me very, very closely and then kind of passed me and pointed their gun at me and kept driving. And that was kind of, it still shakes me and I still get goosebumps thinking about it. I don't know if the threat was real, if he meant it, if he didn't mean it, whatever, if his goal was to, incite fear and, make me fearful, it definitely did. And I felt like that is the most scared I have kind of ever been. And there was no reason for, I was driving the speed limit. I never cut him off, kind of going over in my head, what did I do that kind of caused that reaction? And there was nothing. It was 6:30 in the morning. It wasn't rush hour. There wasn't any traffic. It was, it was just a couple of cars on the road. So it was solely because of the fact that he wanted to, kind of, I don't know, get my attention and kind of make me fearful. And he definitely did that. But yeah, that was, yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
So, but I feel like those were the only, I feel like, two real times where I was honestly scared. And usually that doesn't happen. Doing what I do, not a lot of things scare me, but this definitely did it.
Thank you for sharing that. So, Imam Saeed, so people use religion to justify hateful acts and violence, and that's not exclusive to Islam. Nearly every faith group can point to examples of violence carried out by extremists. But why do you believe that some people use their Muslim faith to justify violence?
If you will, before I answer that, I wanted to speak to the questions about the discrimination and stuff like that real quickly. As strange as it might sound, obviously, as I had alluded to, I'm a convert. If you can't tell on the screen, I'm as white as they come. My family's been in the U.S. Since before the American Revolution, so I have enormous amounts of history in this country. I myself have been told, "Go back to your country." I've been called Osama. I've been harassed because at times I'm visibly Muslim. I've always had a beard. I frequently will dress in flowing garments and have caps on my head and things like that, etc. So I'm visibly Muslim. When I am visibly Muslim, I'm frequently, um, the subject of the side glances they had alluded to, things like that, etc. I used to drive for one of my jobs a van that was covered in artwork relating to the Muslim faith and promoting different Islamic values and teachings. And the experience driving was very clear that people were being exceedingly aggressive when going around me, because the impression was, of course, that the only discernible difference between me and any other car on the road is that I'm an openly Muslim vehicle. So things like that. And then even Judy alluded to the experience of flying while Muslim, which used to be a hashtag, actually. I spent 2 years when I was frequenting the airports, going to different imams conferences and other venues, and every single time I went through security, I was stopped and frisked. It got to the point where I recognized the mark on the ticket that let me know I was going to get stopped. Even when they would miss it, I would tell them, "I think you forgot something." Because I learned the hard way that if you don't do that and you try to get on the plane, you can't get on the plane. They have to frisk you and they have to sign off, or you can't get on the plane. So even I've experienced that. So that just tells you that it's not even about brownness or Arab look, having an Arab look or whatever. Even somebody that looks as white as this will be stopped and harassed and accosted verbally, and things like that, etc. It cuts across all lines. The difference is, of course, I can disappear even more than, say, Badis. I can disappear completely because of the way that I am, which affords me an interesting opportunity to be in gatherings where people are speaking freely, not realizing that there's a Muslim right in their midst, listening to everything that they say. But your question was about essentially the hijacking of religion for extremist ends. So, as you alluded to, that's not unique to any one faith group. You find historically where groups have done that, and the simplest answer I can give you, based on what I know from even the research that has been done on what's described as countering violent extremism, what's been most successful in the countries that have had the most success dealing with this is to provide a re-education to people. Because many times, and the way I usually explain it is this, is that many times what you find is that the extremists, they have a little bit of knowledge, and I stress the little bit of knowledge. They're not ignorant per se. They do have a little bit of knowledge, but what they have, the knowledge they have, is ABC. they have not achieved a level of knowledge to the point where they have an understanding of their knowledge is black and white, if you will. I mean, it's a little bit better of an analogy. Their knowledge is very black and white. It's very good and evil. You know, there's no middle ground. But they haven't evolved into their understanding of religion and religious teachings to the point where they understand the gray area that lies in between, which is significant. And they don't understand context, they don't understand nuance, they don't understand the larger principles and all of these things. And this is one of the areas that they found is very, very critical into re-educating people that have been involved in groups like this, is to give them an education so that they understand these principles in particular of how rulings are made and how things are done to arrive at the overall objective of religious teaching, so that it's not this extremely black and white, this extremely, you know, us or them sort of mentality, but it opens the ability to understand as we had spoken about earlier, the sense of community, where that even in family, we know we don't necessarily agree with each other in family all the time. We may have very pronounced differences of opinion within a family, but we find a way to get along. Usually we're able to strike some sort of a you know, an agreement or a detente between ourselves, so that we have a sense of peace when we're interacting with one another. And it's the ability to have this deeper understanding, and this understanding of these methods of you know, disagreeing agreeably, if you will, that is part of the education process to do that. But it's it's essentially the phrase, you know enough to be dangerous. That's kind of the way it comes across. They have just enough knowledge to feel inspired, but they don't have enough knowledge to understand how to really apply what they've learned. Many times what they've learned is almost devoid of a spirit, and that spirit is what informs the application within a real world existence. And many times they're living in an idealized picture that, except for maybe during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions, has never existed since. And so they're aspiring to something that, you know, at best existed in one generation in the history of Islam. And everything since then has been trying to recapture some of that. But they're so caught up in this perfectionism that they leave no room for the reality of what life is like 1440 years later.
Thank you. Badis, so the word Islam means to submit. Could you tell us how the concept of submitting is reflected in Muslim life and practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, you know, there's so many things you can do in life, and you know, a lot of times people try to say that, wow, so many things are haram or impermissible, but it matters like where your who your circle is, you know, what environment you're putting yourself in, because what's haram is just a small circle in a huge circle of what you can do in life. And so, but the thing is, for those few things, you know, we submit to the will of God and say we are not going to approach those things. And a lot of times there's an open wisdom in that we can understand. For example, for alcohol, you know, there's a, you know, alcohol is very destructive in many people's lives, and it can lead to many negative things. So we know that this is not good for us. Um, and so we don't do it. But a lot of times you don't know exactly the wisdom, but you know God told you to stay away from that thing, or to do this thing. And that's when it comes to the point where you have to just say, okay, I submit to the will of God, and I'm going to listen to him because he is the most wise and he knows what's good for me and what's bad for me. So, you know, for example, there's a lot of situations as a kid growing up where someone might tell you to do something, or you might feel pressure to do something, like let's say smoking marijuana. It's something that a lot of kids do, and sometimes you feel, people around you, like I said earlier, like it matters where what environment you put yourself in, because not everyone does it, but a lot of people, there's a lot of kids that do it. And so if you're putting yourself in that environment, it's going to be hard for you to say, no, I'm not going to do that, because it's not good for me. And, it's I feel that it's against my religion to do so. So it really is about submitting your will to the will of God, and knowing that He knows what's better for me than what I know.
Thank you. Farah, so you work as a trauma nurse clinician at Parkland Hospital. How does your Muslim faith shape and inspire you to serve your community?
I mean, I feel like it's like for any other. I feel like I've found my calling, kind of found my purpose. I mean, I think everyone's purpose is to do good. Isn't that kind of what everyone wants to do? Do good, make a difference. I just happened to know and find mine at a young age. I feel like I've known from the age of like 3 that I've wanted to help people. And as cliche as it sounds, like that is something I wanted. My mom would kind of, flaunt me around to her friends and ask, so tell them what you want to do, when you grow up. And I would say, I'm going to be a doctor in the morning, a teacher in the afternoon, a firefighter, and I would name like, all these. And I had like my day, 24 hours kind of planned out. And they'd be like, well, don't you need to sleep? That's too many jobs. Don't you need to sleep? And I would say, well, people who help people don't need to sleep. And, I've always known I've wanted to do something like that. And just medicine kind of, is something that appealed to me kind of right after that. And then, it kind of dwindled from, firefighter and teacher and all of that to I wanted to just go into the medical field. But I think it's, I mean, there is a, what's it called, verse in the Quran, basically, that says, I believe it's in the Quran, that says, save one life, save all of humanity, just like the opposite of, kill one person, it's like killing all of humanity. So save one life, and it's like saving all of humanity. So, I mean, it's, rack up those good deeds, I guess, you need whatever you can. But honestly, I feel like that's what I was meant to do. There's not a lot of people that can handle what I do, regardless of, gender, race, religion, whatever it may be. What I do is tough. And the fact that I am able to do it, and I am able to compartmentalize and take it, I feel like that's God's way of saying, hey, you're on the right path. Go forth, kind of, do your thing, and, I'll help you kind of away. And I feel like every time I'm kind of, feeling kind of low, and I'm not sure if I'm, in, right profession, doing, or doing the right thing, or I may need a career change, or kind of have had a couple of bad days at work or whatever, it's kind of my ritual almost to kind of talk to God on my way to work. And that's something I do, pray every morning, before every shift. And I kind of just say, hey, Allah, just show me, if I'm on the right path, give me a sign, show me that I'm on the right path. If I'm not, I want a sign either way, but I want to know, and give me a sign that I cannot ignore, and sure enough, and it's not just a small sign. It is like a laundry, pile of all these signs. And it's, it just comes on, and I'm like, okay, I am on the right path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's, it's right. I guess it's right for me. But I just, it kind of goes along, like I said, with the whole, saving saving all of humanity. And the fact that I've been given that opportunity, and have been blessed to be able to do that. And by no means I'm doing it all alone. It's, my hands working, Allah helping me, to kind of help guide my hands and, do the work. So just kind of, blessed to be in this position.
Thank you. And Jyoti, so you've said that your family are strong Muslims and also immigrants in this country. So you kind of hinted at this before. What do you worry about for your family?
So the first thing I worry about in general, for me, my family, everybody, about the stereotyping of people idea of, oh, they're Muslim, so maybe they're that, they're brown, maybe they're that immigrant. So I think like anytime something happens, some kind of shooting, some kind of terrorist attack or something, I am very, very horrified for the people that were involved, people who lost their life. I'm very sad and scared. But immediately my second thought is, I really, really hope that person was not Muslim. because I feel like America is my home now. This is where I live. And I'm a citizen over here from last 11 years. And I've been living in America for last 15 years, which is not long, but still, like, for my lifetime, it's a huge amount of time. This is home to me. But at the same time, I know that there are a lot of people gets very, very scared when they hear like, oh, somebody is Muslim. Like, and when 9/11 happened, I was in Bangladesh still, but I had lots of family members over here. They were extremely scared, and we talked often on the phone, and I heard how scared they were. My cousins, they had to like get rid of their beard. They sometimes, we like in our car, we put a tabiz. I don't know if was the English word, or in any other language it probably pronounced a little bit differently. We put that in the car, so it's for safety, like the God is going to protect us. They removed all those from the car, so nobody could tell that this is a Muslim person car, so they wouldn't attack them. So obviously, I wasn't here in person when 9/11 happened, but I was a kid, and hearing those things scared me very much. 2018, when my parents' car, this few guys broke their car window, I was very much scared for my parents. Also, my husband and me, we married, it's been probably 5 years. We applied, I am a citizen. He came over here legally. We applied legally through lawyers and everything. But about 3 years back, USIS people came to our door at 5 o'clock in the morning with six police car flashing their lights, but like on the door, like so loud sound, and we got so scared. We opened the door and they said, we need to talk to Muhammad. And I said, nobody named Muhammad lives over here in this house. And well, they wanted to see my husband's papers, and he had his social security card and his temporary work visa and everything, all those, and passport. So they saw it, and they knew that his name is not Muhammad, but still they took him with them to the USIS office, and they didn't even tell me where they were taking him. I was so scared to death that where you guys are taking me, no, you can't really take him without giving me any address where you guys are taking him. So that day I was so extremely scared, and I felt like your social security, your passport, your ID, your driver license meant nothing to them. And even though he was in Muhammad, they still took him. And then after, I mean, it was a stupid thing. It was after 1 hour, they said, oh yeah, he's free to go, blah, blah, like there was a mistake. Well, there was a mistake, then why did you guys take him? So this kind of things happens, and I get scared for my family. And a lot of times I tell them not to talk about politics very much outside the house. or I tell my mom, like, don't wear Bangladeshi clothes at the airport, or things like that, like little things like that. I worry that they will be in their most brown form, their very Muslim form, and I don't want them to be, I don't want them to get in trouble because of that. I am fairly like talkative and friendly, and maybe like not as pronounced with my short, asymmetric short bob. Not many people probably thinks that I'm Muslim. I don't face those as much, other than, you know, but I get very scared of my family, them being in the hate crime situations, or, you know, things like that. I also feel nervous in my neighborhood sometimes as well. It's most of the people are not as, and it's my assumption, and I don't feel unsafe, but I feel like they never really like, even though I say hello and get to know them, or I'll try to talk to them, but I feel like maybe because of they have never really like was exposed to a brown person, and that's purely my assumption, and I think that I'm kind of right. So it feels like even though this is home, this is less of a home, because you could face all this everywhere, but at home you want to feel safe. And, you know, because growing up also, like every time we said, oh my God, we get to go to America, like because my uncle applied for us, we one day we'll go to America when the paper comes. And so we always saw America like this amazing place where, like, you know, people respect each other, and they do. It was so high in my imagination that America is the land of perfection. It's perfect land, and no land is perfect. Nobody is perfect. But at the and I don't want it to be perfect. But at the same time, I hope that I will be accepted. I don't have to fear that maybe some crazy person, some bad person is gonna do some kind of terror something. And I hope people will still see like, okay, that's one bad person. He clearly is not religious at all. So we don't have to hate every Muslim, because every religion has some crazy people. No religion says to kill people. No religion says something bad. No religion, actually, I have never read any religions say that, oh, lie, go steal, or do something bad. So I fear that people that are not very knowledgeable or not very kind will like stereotype and try to harm people. But at the same time, I'm blessed to have a lot of friends, and I know that they're going to be in my support system. So I'm kind of fearful, but it's a mixed feelings. Thank you for the question.
So we're getting near the end of our time, so I'm going to throw out one or two more questions kind of to the group. First of all, what can people outside of the Muslim community, people like myself, what can we do to better support the Muslim community, you know, in general, and maybe just specifically here in North Texas? Any ideas?
I guess if I could go ahead and start out, I work obviously in a lot of outreach, so I do a lot of talking to different groups. One of the things I think I would encourage, and thankfully you're doing exactly the thing that I'm thinking about, is if you want to know about Islam and Muslims, ask a Muslim. If I was to say to you, I'm interested in Christianity, and then I go and I ask a Buddhist about Christianity, you'd think, what the heck is wrong with you? What do you expect to learn about this religion from somebody who doesn't believe in or practice the faith? And it's similarly confusing and somewhat maddening at times when you find people speaking about things having none of their information coming from the thing itself. They've consulted every other resource but the faith itself, but the material itself. ask a Muslim. I mean, and like I said, what you're doing here is exactly the kind of thing that I would love to see happen more and more and more. It's not about, and I have this conversation a lot with volunteers. Our goal, I can't speak for other faiths, obviously, but our goal is not about conversion.
Mhm.
Our goal, and what I teach my team, is I tell them, I said, our job is to just try and make sure that they have the best information possible, to make an informed decision, to be a resource, to make sure that they have the information to answer the questions, explain the things they might be confused about, or things like that, etc. But at the end of the day, that our objective, our goal is not to convert people. My objective, is not to convert people. Would I be happy if somebody converted to Islam? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that is not my goal, and that is not something that's in my power. We believe very strongly, and there's a verse in the Quran that talks about this, is that you do not make to believe those that you love, but God guides the hearts, or something to that effect. The idea being is that it doesn't matter how strongly you desire for someone to be a Muslim, or how near and dear to your heart it would be for them to be Muslim. You don't control that objective. And just as an example of that, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of his greatest supporters that helped him in his early mission during the time he was in Mecca as a minority community, was his uncle who raised him. His uncle was on his deathbed, and even though the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had tried to encourage him, say that, would you testify that nothing deserves to be worshipped but Allah, and that I'm the messenger of Allah? And his brothers, his uncle's brothers were there, his other uncles, and they were pressuring him about, don't leave your father's faith. And he died having not accepted the Prophet's message, even though he was his strongest supporter. And so, even though the Prophet desired so earnestly for his uncle to be guided to the religion, that did not make that difference. That was not meant to be. And so that is the idea, that it doesn't matter how much you want them, how much you want your family to be Muslim, how much you want your parents to be Muslim, how much you want a friend to be Muslim, or this, that, or the other thing. That's not under your control. God does that. And if if that's not in his plan, then it's not going to happen, and you can't force it to happen. And so your job is to just be there and to share the message, is to be a teacher, if you will. And so that what you're doing with providing this platform is magnificent. This is exactly the kind of thing. And having people talking, openly, and seeing the spectrum, but these, Farah, Juti, myself, we clearly are not at the exact same point along the spectrum. And so it's providing this range of experiences, this range of perspectives. In some places we were all in coherence, and we were all in agreement. In other areas, we might have all had slightly different opinions. But allowing people to see that no, just like your own faith groups, we're not a homogenous monolithic body. There's a lot of range of experiences and viewpoints and philosophy about how they carry themselves in life, and having that opportunity is huge, is really, really big.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add to just something that we can do to better support the Muslim community?
I will add something to what Said was saying. What are some of the things we could do? I think everything unknown is very difficult, and I feel like starting with very small steps, fun steps, can be one or a few of the things. I always personally think like making friends with other cultures, people, other race, is the best way to get to know like the unknown. I have friends from Vietnam, Philippines, Black friends and brown friends and all colors of friends, white friends, Texan friends, every kinds of friends. And it's so much fun because I get to celebrate their celebrations. They invite me over for their religious celebration, or like every Thanksgiving in Texas. My family doesn't live in Texas, but I almost never stayed in home in Thanksgiving. I always joined someone's house. Trying out food. We live in America. I mean, every kinds of cultural food is available over here, even at 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe not in Texas, but even appreciating like the food, like so many cultures brings in. It's so delicious. Art, like art, music, these things, it doesn't have to be scary. Like going to the DMA and maybe like enjoying one Islamic art or African art, or Latino culture art or fabric or something. I think these are little steps that if people incorporate in everyday life, that's a very small step to take, and this can bring like big difference. Getting to know others.
Anything else you guys want to add? Okay, well, then we're at the 8:30 mark, so I'm going to close out. This has been so incredible, so educational for me. And so Badis, Vera, Imam Saeed, Jyoti, thank you guys all so much for giving us your time, for sharing your stories. It's really meaningful for me. I think it's meaningful for a lot of other people. To everybody watching, we'll send out a recording of this program sometime tomorrow. We'll also send out some recommended reading because we are a library. So we've got lots of books to check out, whether those are ebooks, audiobooks, physical books here. We'll send you guys a list of books on this topic and by Muslim authors. Also, if you guys haven't seen one of our program guides, and all this stuff is online too. We always have this out with all of the programs we have for every age group. Everything is virtual right now, but we still have lots of amazing free programs here at the library. And look out for our spring program guide that we're working on right now. We're actually going to have a children's Ramadan program too. Keep learning about other cultures. And I think that's everything I've got. So again, thank you guys all so much, and hopefully we'll continue doing more programs like this in the future. So
thank you so very much. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you for having us.
Stella.
Bye, y'all.